Okay, so hello everybody. I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement. So Anin, Andriana, Indigenikas, Nogojuanan, Ndojaba. So I just said hello. My name is Andriana and I am from Peterborough, and that was my best attempt at speaking a language that I'm not very familiar with. So I'll move on to a land acknowledgement. So we respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to the First Nations for their care for and teaching about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings. And so today, the overall presentation is going to start with an introduction for Arsalan, and then like 45 to 50-minute presentation by Arsalan. And then we'll have a small question and answer period and closing remarks after that. So thank you all for joining us today. Oh, sorry. So just keep your mics muted until the end, until the question and answer period. And if you have a question along the way, maybe you can pop it in the chat and we'll save it to the end. So I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker for today's event. This person has been a mental health clinician for more than 13 years. He believes the answers we seek lie within us, and he draws on the individual's wisdom combined with his experience to help realize these answers. He most recently worked for the Peterborough Regional Health Center, providing psychotherapy to clients as well as clinical supervision to master's level counseling students. He now offers private sessions from a beautiful farm setting just outside of Peterborough. And a note from his colleague, a colleague describes him as a colleague of his says, Arsalan is a highly experienced and versatile therapist and has expertise in a range of modalities. He integrates therapeutic strategies to support individuals' needs uniquely. So without further ado, please welcome Arsalan Ahmad.
Hey, thanks, Ariana. So hello, everybody. I'm just looking at the number of people here. And so what I was thinking about was so when we were talking about what to present today, and I was thinking about leadership. So the idea was that we talk about leadership, and then, but to me, as I thought about leadership, there were so many, especially because I'm a psychotherapist by profession. I come at leadership through more of self-interest and self-development and kind of the more internal workings as I put myself in a leadership role. And then I was reflecting on my life, and I had a career in computer science. So in 2007, I went to University of Toronto and got a degree in counseling psychology. And since then, I did some private practice. I went to and worked in a hospital, and now I'm doing private practice again. But before that, I was working in a Silicon Valley software company. So that's like, wow, that's like, but so it was interesting, right? So, and I was thinking about leadership, and leadership being, so, when we are in a university setting, and I'm just speaking in sort of an assumption. So, because I've been to universities in America, I was at the University of Arizona for 2 years. I did a graduate degree in computer science, and then I went to the University of Toronto. So when I went into school, I was pretty fresh, and I was learning. I was open, just wanting to. I didn't have sort of that criticalness I feel I have now. So, in universities, they were presenting leadership skills. And so maybe similar to today, you're getting a leadership workshop. So leadership was presented in a certain way, right? So it was, leaders have these qualities, blah, blah, blah. And they're risk takers, they're courageous, they are looking into people's interests, they're good at building teams and all that. So that was fine. So I was, but when I look at leadership now, it's somewhat different. So leadership, because I feel a lot of the structures we learn in school are kind of part of the systems we're part of, right? So we are generally part of a corporate system, a capitalist system, and leadership has a certain tone in those systems, and that's generally what gets imparted in school. So we learn those skills, and when I think of leadership, what I learned in school, it was the ideal leader who would be a good manager in my company, in a software company, or it would be a good, right? So that's fine. I mean, I don't have any thing against that. But what I was hoping today was maybe having a discussion. And again, I would frame it as I don't have the answers. I just want to maybe bring some curiosity, and hopefully my intention is by the end of this talk, maybe you'll have some inspiration or interest to dig deeper and discuss amongst yourselves or with people, so that just kind of a broader thinking than we might, get generally. And especially these days, if you look at the number of protests happening outside, or if you look at the amount of kind of structures we're part of, which are being challenged. And so what does it mean to be a leader? What are the, what are the kind of thinkings we carry, which are part of the systems we already are a part of, and how can that thinking be used to go beyond those systems? And how we define leaders I think that's part of the thinking we carry, because these thinkings, these ideas and schemas we carry are very, it's like the water we swim in. So it's hard to look through them. And hopefully this talk today will, just make you kind of curious about how do you approach those ideas. And like you, for example, I'm guessing some of the people in this talk today might be interested in maybe starting your own company, or I'm just guessing, I'm not sure who's present today, but you might have an idea, you want to climb up a corporate ladder, or you want to do something in the nonprofit sector, or whatever your interest or calling is. And then how do you do that in a way which is, what is that for you? What is behind that for you? What is driving that? What is your intention? Because it's fascinating as human beings. We can have, we can do things, like two people can do the same thing, they can have the same outcomes, they can have whatever, but if their intention can be totally different, and that colors what happens afterwards, and all that. So yeah, so that's give me a second. All right, so happy Valentine's Day, by the way. I hope, so I was talking to Andriana, right? And I'm in Pakistan right now, so I had a family emergency. And so when I decided to do this talk, I was in Canada, and I'm here. And there's not a lot of Valentines here. It's a very different culture, and it's very fascinating. And this is where I grew up. So I'm back home, and it's 25 degrees. So that's good.
It's about minus 15 degrees here.
So let's see. Can everybody mute their mic if who haven't muted their mic? So it might be good to. Yeah, good. Okay, so I'm going to go through a few ideas. I just jotted out some points, and we can discuss them at the end of if you hopefully have questions. I go just a few other things in addition to what was said earlier. So I go by he, him. Currently, I'm working in private practice near Peterborough, and before that, I had a career in computer science. I'm also a political activist. I've been involved in activism. I'm also a dancer, physical arts. I'm a circus artist as well. And yeah, a bunch of interest in other things as well. So if we let's see. So let me start with something. So when I was in computer science, I was working for a software high-tech company in the Bay Area. Kind of I had come from Pakistan. I had done graduate school. I'd done well, and then I was happy to get a job, a high-paying job in Silicon Valley, and it was great. I had money, and it was the first time in my life where I wasn't struggling. I felt I could be comfortable and enjoy and explore. I've always had this curiosity to explore and not kind of settle. So that's kind of, I think I really value that in myself. So I was starting to explore. I started getting into meditation, mindfulness, things like that. But I was also part of a team, software development team in my company. And looking back, so as a team, like I was very new to life in a way. This is my first job ever in a way in a corporate setting. So the team was very fast paced. We were trying to get out these internet modules. Internet was coming online. This was the first 5-6 years of the internet, and the whole team was driven. So we would work long hours, and I was head of that team. But what would happen is that I started to burn out. So over 6 or 7 or 8 months, I started to kind of lose energy. And looking back at it right now, when I reflect on it now, is that intention to be part of the team was coming a lot from ego. It was coming a lot from outcome, pressure, deadlines, and not a whole lot from trying to take care of people or coming from the heart, or so there was a lot of fear. So, right. So all that, we were producing results, but it was stressful. It was fast paced. It was also fun at times, but it didn't last. I couldn't sustain it. And then I stepped back, and things happened. And then I came to Canada, which was in 2002, and I explored a lot of different things. And then I decided to go back to school for psychology. And then I went to get a job in the hospital, which was over the last 6 years. I was part of other teams creating mental health clinics, outreach clinics, drop-in mental health support, things like that. And by that time, I felt I had a different view of myself. So I had done some work on myself and my ability to trust people and be more aware of my intentions. And just there was a significant shift in the way I was approaching teams. I was also part of a healthcare system, so it wasn't that profit driven. It was more in line with my values, and I really enjoyed those teams. So just the whole way the teams were being run, and so it was just interesting. So as I was preparing for this workshop, I was thinking about these teams in the recent years, and the teams in the Silicon Valley era, and how different they were and what made them different. And, so I could say that, if I knew more about teams, I could have done that differently in the Bay Area. But I really think that the work I did on myself, so my ability to trust others increased substantially over the years since between Silicon Valley and the hospital. And that work came through the internal work I did on myself, through therapy, through dancing, through this and that. And that ability manifested in the teams which I was running in the hospital. Because I think one of the things that I love about teams is that I love to see people grow. So if I'm part of a team and I feel this kind of, I love, one of the things I love about teams is to trust somebody with something they think they can't do. And then, but I know that they try, they will, and they can, and then they see them rise up. And that ability to trust and give them space and just be curious about the process is pretty amazing as I work in teams. And that ability came from letting go of the fear I carried from my past, and the things I grew up with, and then learning to trust myself, trust others, and know more about myself, be more aware of my intentions. All of that came together. Okay, So that's the first thing I want to touch on, that the kind of intentions we bring. I mean, there's no fixed points here, but just kind of the intentions we bring. I think leadership is very closely tied to personal development for me. Each time I've taken on a leadership role, it's been partly because people have wanted me to take on a leadership role. I've been given a leadership role, but what's really giving me energy in that role is what I was learning about myself and how I was expanding or growing or being challenged, and that. So different people have different values, but for me, that value is pretty critical, that I want to be growing and I don't want to be stagnant, and I don't want to be a part of a team just for the team to succeed or make money, and just, that's me, and that gave me energy. And I personally think that if that is part of a teamwork you're doing, then that makes it quite juicy and interesting, and then people are growing and you're growing, and hopefully in the teams you are in, you have the space to do that. As part of the structures we are in, is that we get kind of pushed in a direction in a fast-paced environment where we don't have those luxuries. I guess maybe it's a luxury, or maybe it's a privilege to explore that way. The other thing, so I wanted to touch on was that's one thing. The other point and these are kind of separate points, but one thing is, another thing I was thinking about was so if you think about life, your life, right? So when we talk about leaders, again, because of sometimes kind of the conditioning we have, we tend to go towards leaders in a certain context. So leaders are the people who, at work or politicians or but maybe leadership is bigger. Maybe leadership can be, are there people in your family you look up to, or you certain qualities in your family, or your circles you admire, for example. Maybe there's a person in your circle who always thinks the best of people, even when they themselves are not thinking that way about themselves, and that's a very attractive quality. And so that quality is a leadership quality for me. It's like, and that person is just maybe a friend, or maybe they work in the cafeteria or wherever. Maybe the leader is a local person who's organizing a protest, or who's taking a stand against something, or maybe they organize a petition to change something in the university, whatever that is. And then reflecting on what is it about that person which you admire or not admire, or what is the way they're approaching that. I think it's a very fascinating, layered subject. So, one thing I think leaders do generally is that they risk things. So they take a risk. So my sense is, as you go through your life, as I speak for myself, what I've seen in my life is that throughout my life, there's been opportunities which is almost like I'm being put in a situation, maybe in a subtle situation, or maybe a very glaring situation, where I feel I have to do something, right? It's up to me whether I say something or I don't say something. And a lot of times I haven't said something, and sometimes I have. And I feel when I have said something, that's put me in a leadership role, usually where I've taken a stand, or where I've just spoken up. And when I've spoken up, other people who haven't spoken up, they will look up to me as a person who had said something, and maybe this is the person who's more courageous, or has a more of a stake in this, or is able to take a risk, right? So, so it's interesting so that is a small thing that can be considered leadership. And then all of us have, I think pretty much all of us will have that opportunity in our life to, whether we take it or not, whether we go towards it or not. Right? So that's a very interesting thing. Then, so I think generally this is more of a personal opinion, that in our society, what's happened is that it's become more and more corporatized. We have higher stakes in the system. All of us, we have mortgages, we have loans, and this and that, and there's less and less of that questioning and challenging on systems generally, I feel. Maybe it's a subjective opinion, but so so if you want to, so as you think about your careers, and I'm guessing all of you are in university, so where do you want to take your direction? And I sense that when each time you take a decision whether to go this way or that way, so let's say you see something which is not working properly in society, or your local college, or maybe the bus isn't running on time, whatever, can be small, big, and you make a choice. You go this way or that way, you ignore it, or you say something, or you take a stand, or you not. And that depends on a whole lot of conditions, right? Whether you have time or blah, blah, blah. I feel whenever we do that, we get changed. So it's not so much that what the outcome of what you say or your leadership act, or it's not so much, for me personally, is not so much what happens. Does that thing change, or does that succeed? Or because I think change and success, and again, those things are again part of this, to a large degree, they're part of the systems we're part of. So the systems we are working within are focused on failure and success, the black and white, and they're focused on profitability a lot of times. But can there be a way to look at our actions, whether they're leadership actions or other actions, and look upon them as that this is a step I'm taking, right? So this is a step I'm taking because I'm being called to take it, or it falls in line with my values, or if I don't do this, or that this is what I want to do. I want to create a company. I want to create something. This is this is what gives me energy. So I want to go towards that. And to me, what's really fascinating is that, and this is what I've seen in my life, is that it's not so much, and I was talking, I think, to my sister the other day about it, is that it's not so much that you have a whole plan laid out and you execute it and you succeed. It's more that you take a step, right? So you take one step and see what happens. And to me, that step is pretty golden. It's like that step it's incredible, because that step changes everything. It signifies that you've taken a move in a certain direction. It creates intentions. It attracts certain energy. So when you take a step, you'll see that other people will see that step and come towards you, or move away from you. And that has a lot of energy. And that step will change you, right? And that change you will be able to bring to the next step, whatever that step is, whether it's something different or this. And to me, that way of looking at experiences is powerful, because that's how I feel change can happen, or change internally can happen, externally can happen. And that's what I think the universe, how it works. For me, like it's calling me to take those steps. And I think a lot of people, and from my practice in psychotherapy and seeing people function, and myself function as well, is that that's where I trip up, because I for example, I've had this idea to start a podcast for a couple of years now. I want to share these ideas and this and that. But as I watch my mind thinking about this idea, is that it'll go into these traps almost, where it'll say things like, well, it's already been done, right? So there's a lot of people producing podcasts. What do I have to offer, which is going to be different? Is it worth my time? Right? Will I get any listeners? I don't want to put myself out there. I don't want to take that risk, right? So the thinking which happens in relation to what steps we want to take is pretty conditioned. It's like, these are the conditions these are the kind of thought processes I've been working with. Like, they're based in fear. They're based in a reaction to uncertainty, which makes me stuck. It freezes me, because it goes against that idea of taking a step. It's like, don't take that step because of all these reasons. And so that energy I have, that excitement, which when I think of making a podcast, that flare starts to die down, and then it comes up and starts to die down, and then that step is never taken. So this idea that this process, because in that moment, I'm not trusting that step. I'm trusting an outcome. I'm trusting that I have to create a podcast which is going to be accepted by so many people. I'm not thinking about that one step, and then I've lost that. So anyway, it's just an interesting. And I've seen in my life that a lot of us, and again, I include myself in that, we live smaller lives, we live less energetic lives, because of these ways of thinking, because we don't, our lives are less alive. At least my life can be less alive if I don't. And these patterns are hard to be aware of, right? So they're very subtle thinking sometimes. And one of the kind of the things that go by in my life quite often is that what will make me most alive. So that thing of aliveness is pretty critical for me. So aliveness is like what makes me more alive, right? So I'm sure that all of us have some thoughts, have some dreams, or some ideas, or some even a small action. But when you think of that action, your body starts to vibrate. It starts to open, or starts to get energy. So that's aliveness. And I think the world needs people who are more alive. Generally, like a lot of us are not, especially in this kind of culture. We're not alive. We are carrying on with life, but we're either not able to sense our aliveness. We are not able to sense our bodies. And we just don't. Our postures are closed. All that stuff. So what makes us most alive? What makes us more alive in our life? And then the second question I ask myself is, what am I willing to risk for aliveness? So what risk can I take in this moment, which will make me more alive? And that's very interesting, because like if you think about, you might be in a relationship right now, you might have a friendship, or you can apply it to that. For example, you can have, often it happens in friendships or relationships or any connection where you have the other person, you're hanging out, and the other person says something which you don't like, or they don't listen to a need which you have because you don't say your need, or something happens between connection which makes you kind of close down a bit, or you don't. And to me, that moment of closing down is a less aliveness moment. You're closing down. And if you ask that question in that moment, what risk am I willing to take right now, which will make me more alive? The answer might be that I need to say something. I need to say something that shows my vulnerability, my need, my boundary, but something I'm not willing to share needs to be shared right now. And I've seen so many, relationships get stuck in these things because we don't feel we're safe enough to be vulnerable. And the outcome in that moment, so I'm not looking at a bigger picture, I'm just looking at moments, and the outcome in that moment is that I'm less alive. And you'll feel it in your body. If you're sensing your body, you'll notice your body getting damper, more stuck, more kind of solidified, rather than this kind of vibrating open body. And usually this is again generalizing things, but if you take that risk, maybe you'll feel more vibrations. All right. Another word that I was thinking about as I was thinking about this presentation is when I began today, I was talking about the context within which we think about our lives, our dreams, everything. Usually, if it's an examine, is within a context of the current systems we're in. And so even the word leadership and leadership skills, team skills, these are all words. I mean, they're fine words, but they're used by the system, like, they're part of the system. So I was thinking for what would be an alternative word, which would more be in line with what I think about leadership. And one of the things that I think about is the word serving. So if you think about it, like certain words in a culture aren't very prioritized. For example, if you think of the word serving, if you think of the word humility, humbleness, those words aren't. So if you think about leaders, and like, so a lot of times leaders are supposed to be like kind of outgoing, engaging, extroverted. A lot of times we don't hear the word humility with leadership, right? So, or serving. So it's an interesting word. So again, I'm not giving you any answers, but it's an interesting word to contemplate, because serving has a tone to it, which is, you're there for other people. You're there for your team. Right? You're not there to make your something bigger in yourself. Like you're not there to serve your own needs, and you're serving. So I think it's I always think of what world I want to create in the future. Where do I want to live? And I love the word serving, because it's like that's the kind of leaders I want, who are servers, who are serving us, who are humble, who are. If you think of the current political climate, if you think of the leaders, and I don't see a lot of serving happening. That word doesn't seem to be the kind of the motto which is going around, and obviously that doesn't imply that you just you put your needs aside, you're there for yourself, but you also, so serving to me implies that intention, which is different from an outcome, goal oriented, result oriented, striving. So striving is a word which happens often in team. If you think about teams, which you look at team building exercises, you'll see these sport exercises where people are going hardcore at a competition, they're building teams, and that's all fine, but there can be also a lot of striving. So striving is a word which implies white knuckling sometimes, like pushing through, right? And so that's fine. So that we need, in life, we need to push through, we need to strive, but also our whole culture is based on striving, right? Outcomes, goals, and there's a lot of stress. If it's not examined, if it's not done properly, we can get a lot of stress into our body. So how do we move towards a goal which is more compassionate, that's driving more so again, these are ideas, right? So again, hopefully as you leave today, you'll have some food for thought, as they say, to think about these things. Yeah, so that's kind of the more recently I've been so as I left the hospital last year, I started to work. I opened up a private practice. I work with horses as well. So we use horses to help people with PTSD and trauma, and so we do talk therapy as well. So one of the interesting things about equine facilitated therapy and horses is that they are extremely present. So horses are highly present. So they're not thinking-based creatures. They're unlike us. They're in their bodies and they're very sensing. So in order for them to survive in the herd, they need to be highly sensitive to who's around them, and they sense incongruity very fast. So, but what I mean by that is that if you are around a horse and if you're trying to put on a show or an external presence of which does not jive with your internal experience. So if you're trying to be joyful and then internally you feel sad, or if you're trying to show off come off as confident while internally you're feeling insecure, then the horse will sense that right away. And the horses are and they will show it to you in some way, like they'll move away from you, or they'll ignore you, or they'll touch you in a part of the body where they sense this whole thing is happening. So, and horses are interesting because we teach leadership skills through horses as well. And one of the things with horses is that first of all, they will come towards you if you're congruent. So if you're authentic, you don't have to be happy. You just have to be congruent, means honest in what you're experiencing and not hide that. And so you can apply that to humans. So if you are around a person and they are, you sense, because I think humans are very sensitive beings, and I think our culture doesn't talk about that enough, but we are very sensitive beings, and a lot of times that sensitivity is actually cut off, like just because the systems and the way we treat our bodies and the way we talk about our bodies, that sensitivity to our bodies is not privileged. It's culture. You don't hear news talking about these things or mainstream media. It's not something that's part of the narrative usually. But as humans, we are ready. So if you have a leader around you who's not congruent, who you feel is saying something she doesn't, or they don't mean, they feel something different and they're talking in a different language which doesn't jive with that word. So you will feel that generally, and you will react to that. So developing an ability where you are able to sense your bodies, able to articulate what you're experiencing, able to navigate feelings skillfully without suppressing them or distracting from them, taking care of yourself so that your ability to move in and out of feelings is improving. All those things are qualities which are good for leadership. They're good for connecting with people. They'll generally make you happier in general, like they'll make you more peaceful, but they also, I think, qualities which are, I would like to have those qualities in a leader I'm around. Horses also, it's fascinating with horses because I've been learning about this. So one of the things they do is that if you are around a horse and you want to take the horse, let's say from point A to point B, you want to move them across the pen, the pen area. So it's fascinating how you do that. So, and we watch people do that when they come to the offices. So some people will actually use force. They'll try to pull the horse to go where they want to go. Some people will hate using force and they'll be very passive. So they'll just stand there with the horse and try to, the people who succeed, I'm sure people have some people have experience with horses, is the people who are firm, who generally respect themselves and they respect the animal they're working with. And there's a certain sense of presence. And they actually can move the horse from point A to point B even without a harness. Just with, because horses are very sensing beings, so they can actually sense it. My sense is they can sense our intention. So if you are around a horse and you're firm and you're clear in yourself and you want to move the horse from point A to point B, the horse will generally move if they respect you. So it's a very interesting question. How do you make a horse respect you? And the same thing I think applies to leaders in the human world. How do you make people respect you? I think the first quality you need to have in order for people to respect you is that you need to respect yourself. Right? Again, we sense very fast. So if you have a person around you who does not respect themselves, it's going to be hard to respect them. So they might be, you can always get respect through bullying or through coercion, or just because of the person's role. They are your boss. There's the command they say you should, but that quality of that moving an animal across the pen, just with the sense of your intention, of your clarity, that is what I want to cultivate in myself. Right? As I think that's what the world needs, and that's what. So it's fascinating with the horses. There's so much parallels, and we apply that to humans and learn and. So, for example, if a horse is having trouble doing something you want them to do, and you keep pushing them, or you don't give them space to figure it out. So, one of the best things a horse would like is that if you want them to do something and the horse is having trouble, be patient. Be patient. Let the horse figure it out. Trust the horse that they can figure it out, and maybe help them a bit, and you'll see what happens, right? And the same thing with humans, right? So trusting your team members that this person they have the ability to do it. Give them time, give whatever that is, and see what happens. Right? Yeah, so it's been a good learning. It's been a different kind of learning for me, and so quite feel grateful for that. So that's a neighbor of mine. So when I left the hospital, we connected, and they have horses, and I'm a therapist, so we collaborate, and yeah. All right, so let me see the time. You think we should we move into questions? Okay, great.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for sharing your
welcome.
Alternative thoughts on leadership. I think I got a lot out of today, and definitely got some good reminders. Good. So yeah, if anyone has a question, you can go ahead and ask. Arsalan's got a wealth of knowledge that we can pull on here. So if you want to just take a few minutes and think of some questions you have, you can go ahead. If you feel more comfortable to just message in the chat. You can either message me privately or to everyone, and then we can read it out that way as well. I had one question for you, Arsalan, and it was about that notion of taking a step and what that can, like how that can make you look for others. And I was just wondering if you have a memorable time or like a memorable moment when you like had a lot of courage and took a step and you kind of knew that it was gonna have people like react differently to you based on that step.
Yeah, let's see. I think it's more recently where I feel like those steps have been more clear for me. So there was a time, this was last year, where the hospital wasn't doing something which we appreciated. Like the hospital was doing something which we wanted to challenge, and I felt that, so a lot of the people I was working with in that frame, in that time, was let's see. So in that time, a lot of people I was working with weren't wanting to take that step. So that happens often, I think, where you feel that you have something to offer, which you know, where you need to offer that. And so anyway, so what I suggested was that we have a protest outside the hospital, and we stand quietly. So we don't say anything, we just stand quietly. And as a show of we don't agree with the hospital's policy, we took every step to make sure we didn't interfere with anything. We just went off the hospital property and we did that. And the first time I remember standing outside the hospital property, I was really, I was sweating. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing here? You know, my boss is looking at me from the window, and I got fired. But what was the first step was that I felt I had seen a friend suggested doing that. And when they suggested it, this was before we stood outside, when the friend suggested it, I felt in me that I had to do this, right? And that my body told me that I had to do this, and there was no denying that. And that, so to me, that was a step to honor what I felt and do it. And so all I did was I sent out on my chat with these people I work with, I just sent out a chat that tomorrow I'll be standing outside the hospital. Do you want to join me? So that was a step I took. And I didn't know who would come. Maybe I'll be alone. Maybe I'll be escorted off by the police. I didn't know what would happen, but I just sent out the email or that text and said, I'm going to do this. And so to me, that was stepping into like over an edge, what I call an edge. And I didn't know what would happen next. And that, I think, to me is a powerful moment where I do something and I don't know what the outcome will be, but that thing aligns with what I feel and my values, and I need to do this, and I do it. And then what happened was that some people showed up, and then that thing continued and went on and on for a long time, and it grew and waned and grew and waned, and it was great. It was and the thing is, like, it might not have been great. It might have been that I stood there alone myself that day, and that would have been what it would have been. It would have been okay, but at least I took that step. So yeah, that kind of the idea of that, you know, listening to my body, my values, my intuition, taking one step, like sending out that text and see what happens. And it's amazing. I just think the universe creates opportunities when you do that, and then something happens. That's the way I think of it. And then there's more respect in myself because I acted that way. My body feels good. And, yeah.
That's great. Thank you for describing that. Yeah, it was just like help solidify kind of what you meant by that. So if I can summarize, a step would be like when you feel that you need to do something or that something needs to be done, and like the action that you take, you're unsure of what direction it will lead you. That's kind of that's what a step.
Yeah, it might be that, you know, yeah, you're sitting on a bus and somebody like a person is being disrespected, or you feel need to say something. It might be that, right? And then but you also have to, I think, exercise wisdom. So, you don't do that if the person's holding a gun. I'm just saying that wisdom is always guiding, because I felt intuition in my life sometimes, and I know I don't need to act on this right now because it's not going to be helpful. So that ability to discern our body, our intuitions, and be very skillful in navigating, I think, is crucial in anything we do. And so, yes. So, if let's say you don't like something happens, or you like something, you want to make it happen, and you send out an email and see what happens. You take that step, put yourself out there, and see what happens. But that's what I mean by a step, to kind of going to the unknown. You go based on some things you feel, you go into the unknown and see what happens, and then evaluate and go. That idea.
I think that ties in really well with what you were saying about like growing your own self-trust and like your own self-respect too. Like when you do grow your self-trust and respect, then you might feel more like you probably will feel more confident to make a decision, to trust that you know what the outcome may be and you're willing to take the risk. I don't know if that kind of ties together.
Yeah, I think each time we make a loop like that, where we go into something and we act and we take a step and we listen to our bodies, that cycle of wisdom strengthens, and we look at the outcome, whether the outcome is what we wanted or didn't want. But if we keep reflecting that way in each step of life, more and more moments of our life, more and more days of our life, in interactions with relationships, with actions, with school, with business, whatever we do, that cycle keeps strengthening because it feeds off itself. It's like a learning which is happening all the time. It's like a feedback loop. So you acted, and this happened, or that didn't go well. So then you reflect what happened there. So maybe you still should have acted, or maybe you shouldn't have acted. Maybe you should have acted differently, or maybe you didn't listen to something in the body which we, all that stuff. And it's it's a kind of a complex but very fascinating learning. It makes things very interesting for me. And all of us as humans have this ability to do that. We keep practicing that way. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. We do have one question in the chat, which someone else responded to help answer the question, but the question is, how strong is the BIPOC therapist community in Peterborough? And then someone replied with a couple of therapists, I believe, that are at Trent, or counselors that are at Trent. So Lorraine Hale is an Indigenous counselor here at Trent, as well as Kyle White is a BIPOC counselor. But yeah, do you have any more insights about access to BIPOC or POC therapists?
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't looked online how many, but yeah, Peterborough is not that, I would guess not that many. It is a very white, and I think when I was working in the hospital, there were more and more people of color and different orientations. So Peterborough, I think it's changing. I think it's definitely changing in the last 6-7 years I've been here, but it is definitely more predominantly white and more, that's kind of the nature of this area. I think it's so different from downtown Toronto, or this whole, the good thing is, if you're looking for certain kind of therapists or people, therapists of color, and with this whole COVID and online, you can go anywhere really now, if you're open to online therapy. It's not the same, because I do feel that having people in the community is pretty important, and physically present, because I think therapists need, I think all professionals, anybody really needs to engage in the community, right? So therapists should be speaking about mental health issues in Peterborough, which is huge. Peterborough mental health is a crisis in Peterborough, and so So having people of color speaking out about these things, who are on the ground, who are in the community, is just pretty important. Online therapy can help, but sometimes it takes away from what we need in communities, and everybody involved in that area needs to be speaking out about that area, right? Because they have expertise in that area. And that's again part of having that integrity, doing your part, right? But it can be in any profession, whether you're a bus driver or whatever you do. So that's hopefully it's going to change more and more. So I would say predominantly it's not people. Obviously, it's quite different, but in a few years, when strong grows. Yeah.
Thank you for answering that and giving some insight too into how people should be engaging through their profession in the community that they live in. So I will just stop the recording for now, and then we do have more questions. Maybe if people want to stick around and ask you more questions, are you open to that?
Yeah, I have a few more minutes.
Okay. And then, so sorry, I'll just officially end things. Thank you everyone for joining. And thank you so much, Arsalan, for sharing your insights into what leadership is to you and how your life has influenced those beliefs.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was fun. Yeah, and if you're sticking around, just if you even have some comments about what I said, you don't have to have questions. If you're curious to know about your thoughts. And
I don't know how to end the recording. Oh, there we go.